Hi, in this session we will see how to import or create a data model using SCGW, that is the service builder. Then what is the mapping, what are the runtime artifacts, then what is the service registration and how we do that using the service builder. So let's start with importing a data model. So first of all, what is the use of a data model? So like why we need to import it basically. So we have four different options to import a data model, that is the data model from a file, DDIC structure, RFC or BOR interface, and then the search help. So we will first see about the data model from file. So the file import function is developed to allow importing of the data model files defined by external model editors like EDMX file, which are created using the Visual Studio, and the metadata files type, that is XML, into the service builder to create a data model. So the files can be imported into the service builder for the project types including service with SAP annotation and then the service with vocabulary based annotation. So this feature can be used in the scenarios like to import a metadata or EDMX file for a new project, in which where you have to create a new project and then import a file, or you can also use to import a metadata or EDMX file for an existing project. So it means that the project is already there and you are importing this file into a already existing project. So there are certain prerequisites for this, that is for the data model files with vocabulary based annotations, the used vocabulary definition should be available in the vocabulary repository maintained in service builder. Then if the EDMX file has only the reference URL for referring the used vocabulary, then as a prerequisite the used vocabulary should be imported manually into the data model before the file import. And at last we have to ensure that the virus scan profile is active and selected as default profile in SAP system. So these are the three prerequisites which are required when we are importing a file, when we are importing a data model from a file. So now let's see how we can import a data model using a file with a new project. So basically the steps are like, first of all we have to go to the transaction SCGW, then we have to create a project there. So once the project is created, after that we have to import the data model from file using the context menu of data model. So this way we can create and import it. So let's see how it looks like in the system. So if I go to my Fiori system and if I will log in to that SAP system where my gateway is installed, so I'm just logging in into my server where my gateway is there. So I'll just continue. Now we have to go to the transaction SCGW, which is for the gateway service builder. So either I can write down the transaction directly here, or I can double click on under my favorites for the shortcut. Now in this we have the this menu from where I can create the project. So first of all, how we create the project is we have to click on this icon which is for the new project. Then we have to give the name of the project. So let's say if I want to give demo underscore project underscore new, then we can just copy the description, or we can change the description as per a requirement. So for the project type, for a import from a file, we can either choose the service with SAP annotation or the service with vocabulary based annotation. So only these two options we can choose if we want to import from the data file. Then we'll leave this generation strategy as standard. Then for the package we will use the local object. So my project is created, that is the demo project new. Now if I expand my data model folder, it already have the entity types, associations and the entity sets inside it. So if I want to import a data model from a file, I'll just right click it. I can go to import and I can click on this data model from file. Now we have two options here. The first one is the custom import and then we have the full import. So the custom import is basically for the existing project. So let's say in this case we are using the project which is not there already, but we are creating it. So in this case we will have the option of only full import. But if it is like a new not the new project and already existing project, so in that case we can use the custom import as well. After that we have to browse the file from here. So if I click on this browse, I can choose that file from any of my location on where the file is existing. So if I go to the file types here, so we have only the XML file and the EDMX file existing. So I can use only these two formats if I want to import a file. So if I choose any other format file, so it will throw an error. So this way we can create a once we choose the file from here, so it will automatically import the entity types under my data model. So this way we can import the file using the new project, and after that we can save the project. So now we'll see like how we can use the already existing project. So say if I want to use the already existing project, in that case we have the open project icon here. So we can go directly here, the next to the new project we have the open project. So we will basically click on this open project, and after that we can choose, either we can write down the name directly or we can use this help or the F4 menu for project name. So now I can see all the existing projects in my system. So I can select any of these. So let's say if I want to use this Z demo test, and then we have to click on this execute. Okay, so this project is already opened. So this Z demo test is already there, that's why it is showing me that error. So I can directly go to this. Now I can right click, and if I go to the import, so none of my option is enabled here. So the reason behind this is that I am using the already existing project and I have not gone to the change. So I am just in the display mode right now. So if I want to go into the change mode, so I can just directly click on this change. Now if I right click and go to import, so my data model from file option is enabled. So I can again directly click on this data model from file, and now we can see that this custom import is enabled. So this is the difference between the full import and the custom import. So basically when we create the new project and we are like creating everything from scratch, then it will be using the full import. But if we are using the already existing project, we will get the custom import option to select the objects manually from the model. And we can also select the full import to override the existing model in this case. So this way we can select any of the options as required, and an OData consistency check is performed on the project to report any OData compliance errors. So this way we can choose the file, and then so again we can choose any of the two options, that is the XML or the EDMX, and we can select the file, we can import the file, and then we can save it. So this is how we can use the import from file option for importing the data models. Now let's go back to the presentation. So just now we have seen how to import the data model from a file. Now the second option is how to import from the DDIC structure. So what is my DDIC structure? So basically, to reduce the time required to create the complex types and the entity types in our data model, SAP NetWeaver Gateway Service Builder provides us the import DDIC structure function, with which we can import an existing ABAP structure and we can reuse this data to create new complex type and the entity type with ease. So what does that mean is that using this option we can create the already existing ABAP structures. So these DDIC structures can be imported only for the project types, service with SAP annotation and service with vocabulary based annotation, similar to the data model from file. So we can import the DDIC structures into the service builders, which are views, database tables and the structures. So only these three DDIC structures can be imported into the service builder. Now what is the procedure for it? So we have three main steps to import the DDIC structure, which comprised importing the DDIC structure, then selecting the parameters from the DDIC structure, and lastly we can modify the selected parameters. So now let's see how we can do this. So let's go back to the system. So similar to the import from data file, so we can we have to go to the transaction, that is SHEW, and after that we can either create a new project or we can use the already existing one. So since we have already created a new project for our last exercise, we can select this one only, that is the demo project new. So to proceed, what we have to do is we have to select this data model, then we can right click, we can go to the import from DDIC structure. So instead of data model from file, in this case we will select DDIC structure. So herein we have to enter the name for the new entity type or the complex type in this name field. So let's say if I want to select the demo underscore entity type. After that we can either select the entity type, that is to import the selected structure into your data model as an entity type, or we can select this complex type to import the selected structure into data model as a complex type. So we can we have to choose from these two options based on our requirement. Then in the ABAP structure field we have to enter the name, ABAP structure name, or we can use the input help to get the assistance. So what does that mean is that we can select from here, that if I click on this ABAP structure, so we have this F4 help, and here we can write down the name of the table, structure or view. So now let's say if I want to import from my ABAP structure, which is MARA, that is table. If I write down MARA here, after that we have this option of create the default entity set. So we can select this option if we want to create an entity set for the entity created. If we don't want it, then we can just uncheck this option. So once done, we have to click on this next to proceed. And if there is no error or something, then we will get this window, but if there is any error, we will be able to see that error on the screen. So if the validation check is successful, we will be on this screen. So based on the selected ABAP structure name, we can see a detailed display of the components of the structure as a tree. So since we have selected MARA table, so I am able to see all the fields of my MARA table here. So the columns which are editable in this window are the data source parameter, then the assign structure, and then the import search help. So these three columns are my editable in this window. That is, I can choose the data source parameters, I can assign the structure to it, and after that the import search help option. So the column search help displays the search help associated with the fields. So we can expand the data source parameters and we can select the required structures, tables or the properties. So we can collapse or expand it from this icon. So now after that we can select the few of the fields from here. Like say if I want to select few of the columns of my MARA table. After that my import search help checkbox will be enabled if the search help is associated with the respective data source parameter, and the associated search help is displayed in the search help column. So we can import this search help by selecting the respective checkboxes if we want. So the imported search help will be created as a separate entity into my data model. If we don't want to do it, we can simply click on next. So now I can see based on the selections, the service builder will list all the selected fields in the structure to import as an entity type or the complex type. So from this we can select the key properties as well. Like say if I want to make this MANDT as a key, so I can make a key from here. So I can just check or uncheck this option using this is key, and this way I can make any of these fields as a key. Now the modify entity type screen is providing us the following editable and the non-editable information. That is, I am having first of all this is entity. So if the property belongs to the entity type, this checkbox will be selected, and if it is not selected, the property belongs to the complex type. So this is my non-editable field and it will be selected, this checkbox will be selected based on my selection of entity type or my complex type. After that we have the complex or the entity type name. So this is the name of my property. It can either be a complex type or it can be a entity type. And this is my editable field. Then we have the ABAP name. ABAP name is the technical name. This will not be displayed in the metadata. So this is basically again my non-editable field. After that we have is key. Is key means it indicates that whether the imported property is to be imported as a key of the entity type, and if each entity type must be defined at least one key property. So basically if we are defining the entity type, we should define at least one key property field. So let's say if I make this MANDT as a key. Again this is my editable property. After that we have the type. So this is basically my type of my property. So it is non-editable and it will come from the structure selected. Then we have the name. So this is my name of the property. So this is a editable and I can, by default it will take it as the name from the structure. If I want, I can change it and I can give any name which I want to give. Then we have this label. So this is the label for the properties which will be displayed in the metadata. Again this is a editable property. So we can give the names, we can change this label as per our requirement. After that, if we have selected the create default entity type option in our previous screen, then the entity sets are created for all the entities and mapping proposals are created for query and read operations for the selected entities from the search help. So my entity sets will be created with the suffix set. For example, if my entity type name is E1, then the default entity set name will be E1 set. So we can choose not to create the entity sets and mapping proposals by deselecting that box. Now we will click on this finish. So as soon as we have clicked on this finish, so the model contents are transformed from the wizard to the data model as a new entity type together with its properties, and the entity sets are also created. So if I expand this entity types, I can see this demo entity type, and if I expand it, I will be able to see all the properties of it which we have selected. Similarly, since we have selected the create entity sets option, so it has automatically created the entity sets as well. So I can see that I have this demo entity type set automatically created for this entity type. So the selected ABAP structure name is displayed in the ABAP structure type name field of the imported entity type, and the mapping proposals for the query and read operations for the entities created from search help are created. So this can be confirmed by expanding the service implementation folder. So if I expand this service implementation folder, and if I expand this entity set, so I am getting this read and the query operations, that is the get entity read and the get entity set query. So if I double click the mapping node, so I can see here that I already have this this type set created here. So there might be the instances when some properties were not selected during an import of DDIC structure. In such cases, the import properties functions can be used to import more properties from the same data source. So this is how we can import the entity types or import the data models from my DDIC structure. So basically we have selected, we have created the new project, and after that we have used this context menu of the data model. We have imported a DDIC structure. So in this case we have seen the example of MA array, wherein we have selected few fields from it, and we have seen how it has already imported, how it has automatically imported the selected properties, how it has automatically created the entity sets, and how it has created the read and the query operations for it. So now let's go back to the presentation again, and let's see the other features. So till now we have seen how to import the data model from a file, and then how to import from a DDIC structure. So now the next option is importing a data source from a RFC or the BOR interface, that is the Business Objects Repository interface. So let's see how we use this. So to reduce the time required to create the entity types in our data model, SAP NetWeaver Gateway Service Builder provides us the import RFC or BOR interface function, with which we can import an existing data source, and we can reuse this data to create the new entity types in a very easy way. So we have a wizard to which will guide us to use this process. So my RFC BOR can be imported only in the project types of service with SAP annotation and service with vocabulary based annotation. So it comprises of the three steps, that is importing the data source, selecting the parameters, and then after that editing the selecting parameters. So now let's again go back to the system and see how this import from RFC BOR interface works. So if I go here, so basically either I can use the I can create the new project, or might be we can use the existing project as well. So since we have created this project recently, so I'll be using the same one. So first of all you have to just right click this data model, you have to go to import, and then we have to select this RFC BOR interface. Now in the entity type name, we have to enter the name for the new entity type. So let's say if I give it as demo underscore BOR RFC. Then in the target system, we can either select the remote data source or the local data source radio button. So basically I can choose any of these options. The remote is basically we have to select this option to fetch the properties that resides in the remote system. On selecting this option, the RFC destination field is activated. So we can see this RFC destination field, right? So if I click on this remote, so only in this case this RFC destination field will be enabled. And we have to select the local option to fetch the properties that resides in the local system. So the RFC destination will not be activated in this case. So if a model is created using the import RFC-BOR function and later has to be transported to another system where the DDIC objects may not be available, it is recommended to create the model using the RFC destination as none. So if the RFC destination is none, then no DDIC objects will be assigned to the entity type, and the individual data element assignment to the properties will not happen, and local data types will be generated in the MPC. So after that, for the remote data source, we have to enter the parameters of the connection in the RFC destination field. For example, we can add the TCP IP or SAP connections. Alternatively, we can also use the input help available in this. After that, we have to select the, so in this case we are using this local option. Then we have this data source attributes. So we have to select the type of the data source from the type field drop down in the data source attributes. So if I click on here, I have two options, whether it is a remote function call or whether it is a BOR, that is the business objects repository object. So we have to select this depending on the or upon a requirement. So depending on the selection in the type field, we have to enter the name of the data source in the name field. So let's say if I select business objects repository. Now this name we can select, we can either write down the name directly or we can use the F4 help again. So let's say if I take an example, if I go to the F4 help, so I can choose any of the methods out of it. So let's say if I take this get list. So if the target system is local, and when we select a property without selecting its structure or the table type, the property will be assigned with the corresponding data element. But if the target system is remote, then the data element assignment will not happen. So if the target system is local and when you select a property along with its structure / table type, then the DDIC structure is assigned to the complex type or the entity type. Whereas if this target system is remote, then the DDIC structure assignment will not happen. So now let's go to the next. So we have to choose this option of create default entity set if we want to create the entity sets. Now let's click on this next. So in this we have all these options of data source parameters, assign structure, whether it is then we have this mandatory, then we have this default value. So again on this screen we have certain editable properties, and then we have certain non-editable properties. So what do you mean by this assign structure is that my assign structure, we can select the checkbox under this assign structure to create additional artifacts. So my complex types will be created if the parameter is a structure type, and the entity type will be created if the parameter is a table type. So DDIC assignment will be retained for the newly created artifacts. If this checkbox is not selected, then all the properties will be created under one root as a flattened structure. So this way we can use this assign structure option to define whether it is a flat structure or it is a tree structure. So we can choose few properties from here. So let's say if I go to the header data and I choose few properties out of it. Now I will click on this next. So I am at the modify entity type window. So on this screen, first of all, we have this is entity. So if the property belongs to the entity type, this will be automatically selected. If it is not selected, the property belongs to the complex type. So this is similar to the one which we have already discussed, the DDIC structure one. After that, again, this complex in the entity type name, this is the name property. So it can either be a complex type or it can be an entity type. Then we have the ABAP name. So this is the technical name and it will not be displayed in the metadata. Then we have the is key. So is key means that we have to whether this property is a key or not. So we can select this checkbox based on that. So let's say if I select this BPID as a key. Then we have this type, which is telling me the type of my property. Then the name. So this is the external name displayed in the metadata. After that, we have this label. So this is again the label for the properties which will be displayed in the metadata. Now I will click on this finish. So now my this entity type will be imported into my data model. So this is my demo BOR RFC, right? So if I expand this, I am able to see all those properties which were there. So I can see the table type properties converted as the properties under my entity types. Similarly, if it is a complex type, so I would be able to see the complex type folder, and under the complex type folder I will be able to see the properties. So this way we have imported the properties here. So the new entity type we have created can also be assigned to a structure, but we will be skipping that as of now. And we can see that we have this entity set created for this entity type as well. That is, we have this demo BOR RFC set created under the entity sets. So this way we can import the properties from my RFC or the BOR. So there is a constraint for this RFC and BOR import, and it is for RFC and BOR an input mapping will be created only if we click on the propose mapping, and there is an import parameter in the data source with the same name as the data source attribute from which the property was created. So this is one of the constraints if we are importing the data model from a RFC or BOR file. Now let's go back to the PPT once again and let's see the last option of importing a data source. So till now we have discussed the import from a file, import from a DDIC structure, and from a RFC and BOR interface. So now let's discuss the importing search help as a data source. So this is the fourth option which we have if we want to import a data source. So in the service builder, we can reuse the existing search helps in a system as a data sources to create the new entity types. Only the search helps in the local SAP system can be used as a data source. So when we choose to use the search helps as a data source, the service builder will allow us to import the search help parameters to create the OData model entities based on the imported search help parameters, to map the query and the read operation for the model entities to their corresponding search help parameters, and it will allow us to generate and register the OData service. So basically the features of importing the search help parameters are like, we can import the search helps as a data sources using the import wizard to create a new entity type and a corresponding entity set into your project. So when we import a search help as a data source, the tool will check that the search help we have specified exists and that is an elementary search help, and also returns the search help description. It will also build the search help parameters that we specify, creates a result table and range tables based on the logic described. So the maximum hits data element is provided automatically in the service builder. So now let's go back to the system and see how we can use the search help to import as a data source. So again we can use the same project and we can right click it. Then we can go to import search help. Now we have to enter the entity type name. Now in the import search help, we have to enter the name of the search help, or we can use the F4 function to select it from the list. Now let's say if I select any of it, so might be the sales order one. After that we have this create default entity set option, so this we have already discussed. Then we have the query and the read. So we can select the query and or read to create an automatic mapping proposal for the query or read operation. So now let's say just select on next. So we will be able to see this window wherein we have the data source parameters. We have the assign structure, mandatory, default values, description. So an output table that represents the runtime results in a list. So it is a representation of the search help parameters. So the table here is a representation of the result list that the users retrieve once they execute that search help. So we can expand this. And we can select the values, properties from here. After that we have to just click on next. And we will be able to see all these properties, that is entity, complex entity type, ABAP name. So I'm not describing this again because we have already covered it. And we will click on this finish. So as soon as we have clicked on this finish, so we are able to see the new entity type, that is this one into my under my entity type. So I can expand it, I can expand the properties. So I can see the properties which are there, which were available to me and which we have selected at the time of import. Similarly, if I go to my entity sets, I can see one entity set created for the sales order set. So this is how we can import the entity types and create the entity sets automatically from my search helps. So now let's go back to the system again, the presentation again. So till now we have seen like how to import the data model from file, how to import it from a DDIC structure, how to import it from the RFC or the BOR interface, and then how to import it from the search help. So now let's discuss the service implementation. So the service implementation contains the references to the operations and the methods for the service. So it is a subtree containing the runtime aspects of the service as reflected in the data provider class. So if I go back to my system and if I expand this service implementation, so what I can see inside it. So first of all, I can see the entity set name. So this is the actual name of an entity set object that already exists in the entity set folder under the data model folder of the project. So we cannot edit, add, delete or change any actual entity set contained in this entity set folder as it is reflected from the data model folder. So basically I cannot change it because this is already picking it from the data model folder. So I can right click the folder and I can see the option which is display, which switches between the read only and the edit mode for the service builder. After that we have this change. So it switches between the read only and the edit mode for the service builder. Then we have this details. So the service entity set table displays in the view on the left hand side. So if I click on this details, yeah, so if I click on the details, so I can see the service entity set table which displays on the right hand side of it, and in this the service entity set displays the names of all the entity sets for the service in the service implementation folder, and my model entity set will display the names of all the entity sets for the model in the service implementation folder. In addition, the selected entity set in the project tree expands to display the default set of operations. So if here we will see, so we have the default operations, that is the create, delete, get entity read, get entity set query, and update. So we can select and right click an operation related to an entity set to display it, to change it, to map to data source, to go to ABAP workbench, or to see the details of it. So if I go here and select any of the operations here, so let's say if I select and right click, so first of all we have this display. So this display switches between the read only and the edit mode for the service builder. Then we have this change. This is also again to switch between the edit mode and the read only mode. Then we have the map to data source. So if I click on the map to data source, it will opens the map to data source dialog in which we can map the selected operations to a data source. After that we have this go to ABAP workbench. So it will opens the class builder to display the selected method. Then we have this details. So if I click on the details, so it will open up. So let's say if I click on the detail. So if I click on the detail, it will open up the table on the right hand side, and it shows the operation name, so which displays the default operation. So these can be create, delete, read, update, query. Then we have the data source group. So this data source group displays the name of the group object to which the data source for the entity set belongs. After that we have the data source name. So it displays the name of the data source as specified in the mapping. Then we have the data source type. So it will display the name of the data source type that we select for the mapping. So it can be a RFC or it can be a BOR. Then we have the RFC destination. So it will display the RFC destination as specified in the mapping. When we choose the local data source, the field is not available for editing. So it is only available for the remote data sources. Then we have the implementation class. So it will display the name of the generated data provider class extension. So if the data provider class, so it will if the data provider class has been redefined, it will display the name as a linked text that opens the redefined class in the ABAP workbench. Then we have this method type, method name. So it will display the name of the implementation method in the DPC class. Then we have the mapping link. So it will display that the text that is enabled as a link only if the operation contains a mapping. So when selected, it opens the mapping UI for the operations for making the changes. So this is my this is the detail of my service implementation, like what this folder contains and which all options we have inside it. Now let's go back to the PPT. After that we have the mapping to the data source. So what is my mapping? So mapping is a manual relation that we establish between the parameters of a data source object and the properties of an entity set in the service builder. So using the mapping, we are basically defining the links, the mappings between the SAP backend system and the properties of my entity set. So my service builder will enable me to map the data source for for the operations like create, update, read, delete, and the query operation. So in the service builder, we can map the operations, we can map the types for the data sources, which are RFC and BOR. So the mapping can be created only for the remote function calls or the business objects repository. So now let's see how we can create the mapping in my SCGW command. So basically we can map the entity sets with the embedded complex type, delete the mapping for an operation, or we can update the mapping information. So the process for it is that each entity set that is listed in the service implementation folder has the default operations to which we can map the data source. So to map this, we can expand, we can go to the service builder, we can expand this service implementation, and then we can select the entity set we want to map to the data source. So let's select this demo BOR RFC set. So we already have these operations which are there. So let's say if I select this get entity set query. So if I right click it and if I go to this map to data source, so in this we have the targets. Under the target system we have to specify the local or the remote. So we have to choose the local if the data source to which we want to map is in the same system as the service builder, and we have to choose remote if the data source to which we want to map is in a remote backend system. So this option is applicable only where the service builder is deployed in the SAP NetWeaver Gateway Hub system itself. So my remote option is applicable only if my SAP NetWeaver Gateway deployment is a hub deployment. Then in the so we will choose the local as of now. Then under the data source attributes, we have to first specify the name. So the type. So the type can be the business objects, repository object, we can have the search help, we can have the remote function call. So we have to select the remote function call data source to specify the remote function module from which we want to map the selected parameters to the properties of an entity type. We have to select a BOR to specify the BAPI methods from which we want to map the selected parameters to the properties of an entity type, and we have to select this search help if we want to specify the search help which we want to map to the properties of my entity type. So let's say if I want to choose this BOR. Then in the data source name we have to specify the data source name, or we can use this F4 menu. So let's take the example again of EPM star. So if I want to select this get list, now I can see this mapping node enabled as a mapping node enabled under my query operation. So the mapping displays as a node under the selected operation of my entity set in my service implementation folder. So the mappings and the mapping screen is displayed on my right hand side. So we can map the parameters of a data source to the properties of the entity set in this mapping screen. So we basically have this BPID, so I can map it this entity set property to my data source parameter. So this way we can do the mapping. We can also use this propose mapping if we want. So if we click on this propose mapping, it will automatically propose a mapping for it, and it has automatically taken up the parameter and the entity set properties, and it has mapped it automatically. So this way either we can use the the automatic mapping, or we can do it manually as well. So this is how we can do the mapping in my service implementation folder. Now let's go back to the presentation. So there are certain mapping rules for a query operation. So whenever we are doing a mapping for a particular operation, so there are certain rules which we have to follow before doing that. So the if the data source parameter we are mapping is a table or structure, the mapping attribute is automatically defined according to the data source parameter type. So in case the data source parameter is of type changing, Service Builder does not automatically set the direction and we must manually set the mapping direction. Then if the data source attribute we are mapping is a table, the mapping attribute is changed to the type output. If the data source attribute we are mapping is a range table, the mapping attribute is changed to the type input, and we can only map one table of type output. When the mapping a property that is set as key, it must be of type output. So the key property must be mapped to one of the attributes in the table parameter in the remote function module or the data source. Also it can be mapped to the input parameter of a remote function module. So in this case it allows us to filter the results by the key property as well. So these are the few of the mapping rules which apply to my query operation. So then we have the mapping the query operation. So in this, when mapping the query operation of an entity set to a data source, we can map the standard input parameters or the range parameters and filter the output to enable searching for flights between certain date ranges. So this is an example. So we can use the propose mapping button to automatically generate and display the available mapping relations between the properties and the parameters of my data source. So that we have just seen how to use the propose mapping button. So if there is no information about the mapping, no mapping will be proposed. So to map the query operation, so we have just seen the procedure of it, that we have to go to the mapping, then we can in the mapping window we can either do the manual mapping or we can do the this one. We can do the propose, you use the propose mapping button to automatically map my entity sets to my this one, the data sources properties. Now let's move to the mapping the read operation. So when mapping the read operation in an entity set, we can map input, output and changing parameters of the properties, and we can also include the constant values in the mapping. So we can use the propose mapping button again to automatically generate and display the available mapping relations between the properties of the entity set and the parameters of a data source. So again, similar to the query operation, we have certain rules for the read mapping the read operation as well. That is, when mapping a property that is not set as key, it must be of type output. Then we must map at least one data source parameter as type output. Then all the properties that are set as key must be mapped as input or output. Then if we provide the constant values, they must be of type input. So if I go back to my system and instead of this query operation, if I right click the this one, the read operation, and go to map to data source, so if I'm using the read operation, so in the types in the data source type, I can choose the BOR, I can choose the remote function call, I can choose the business entity, and I can choose the search help. So we can see that similar to the query operations in the read operation as well, I can use this propose mapping, and it will take the mapping automatically for my entity set property and my data source parameter. Now let's go back to the mapping of how we can map using the other operations. So till now we have seen it for the query operation and for the read operation. Then we have mapping the create operation. So you must map the parameters from the data source to the create operation of the entity set. So we can use the propose mapping button again to automatically generate and display the mapping, and if there is no information, so no mapping will be proposed. So the mapping rules for the create operations are like all my properties set as key must be mapped. We must map at least one data source parameter as type input. So after that we have mapping the delete or the update operation. So when mapping the update or the delete operation to a BOR object method or an RFC as the data source view enables only the data source parameters of type input for mapping. So all other parameters of type changing or output are displayed, but we cannot select them. So we can use the propose mapping button in this case to automatically map the properties to my data source. So the mapping rules for the delete or the update operation are all the mapping is of type input and we cannot edit the mapping direction. Mapping of all the properties set as key must be of type input. So if I go back to my system, if I go to the delete and right click and click on this map to data source, so I have again I only have the two types, that is the BOR and the remote function call. So this way we can select for the mapping, we can create the mapping for the delete and the update operation. We can choose this propose mapping. So since this is there is no information about this mapping, so no mapping is proposed automatically. So this is how we can create the different mappings using the different operations which are available under my service implementation. Now let's go back to the presentation. Now what are the runtime artifacts? So we must generate the service when we have defined the metadata for it. So we generate the service in the service builder, which will automatically generates the code for making my service OData compliant and for use in the SAP gateway. So in addition, the service builder automatically configures the project by assigning the data model to the generated service for use at runtime. So the following occurs when we generate the service. The implementation classes for the data model and the services are automatically created. The service is automatically registered in SAP Gateway. So my service builder automatically generates the corresponding code where we have mapped the parameters of a data source to the properties of an entity set. So now let's go back. So then what are the different runtime objects which get generated? So we have the ABAP classes. So we automatically generate the code for the runtime functionality of my data model. So the service builder generates the classes with the generated code and handles the service registration process for IW_BEP based on the services for you. So the generated classes are will be listed under the runtime artifacts folder. So to create the runtime classes and register the service, we have to go to the service builder. So let's go back to our system. So we can select the project. And after that we can click on this generate runtime. So once we will click on this, we have to enter the name for the implementation class in the class name field. So once we will click on this generate runtime button, so we will be able to see this model and service definition window. So in this we have to first of all enter the name under the model provider class. So we have to enter the name of my implementation class. So the proposed naming is that it should start with the ZCL underscore your project name underscore MPC underscore EXT. After that we have to enter the name of the base class. Similarly, we have to enter under the DPC, that is the data provider class. So we can select or deselect this generate classes option. So if we deselect this generate DPC classes option, the classes do not get generated for DPC and service registration will not be available. Then in the after that in the service registration we have to give the technical model name, the technical server name. So technical model name will basically specify the name of my technical model. So this references the model provider class which provides the metadata for the model. Then we have the model version. So it will specify the version number for the model. Then we have the technical service name. So this is a key to assign the models to a service. So then we have this service version which will specify the version number of the service. So we should always make a note of this technical service name. So we use this name to register and to activate the specific service in the SAP gateway system. So after that we have to click on this checkbox, not the checkbox, sorry, on the tick mark. So then we have to choose the package. So we'll use this local object and it will create the runtime artifacts for us. So now if we go to this runtime artifacts folder, I will be able to see all these classes generated, all these runtime artifacts generated under my runtime artifacts folder. So now let's go back to the PPT. So now after that, what are the different classes and the service registration which got generated? So we have basically the two types of classes. We have the base class and we have the implementation class under it. So the service builder uses the patterns to separate between the generated logic and your own code. So the base classes basically contain the service builder generated logic. The logic is in the base class is overwritten every time the project is regenerated. So we do not modify the code in this class, as the service builder will overwrite its content every time. Then we have the extension class. The extension class names have the suffix ext. An extension class is a subclass of the base class that is generated once only when the project is generated for the first time. An extension class contains no logic. The service builder provides the extension class for us to write our own code. Regenerating the project does not override the code which is there in the extension class. So we provide our own logic by redefining the method we wish to modify. When the classes are created, they are listed under the runtime artifact folder. So if I go back to my system, so I can see the different classes here. So the first one is for the MPC. So for the MPC, we have the two classes generated. The first one is the MPC implementation class, then the MPC base class. So my MPC implementation class is a automatically generated class for an inherited MPC class of the specified model. So we can modify the code to suit our needs in the implementation class. So this is my implementation class. After that we have the MPC base class. So MPC base class is also automatically generated and for the MPC super class of the specified model. So we cannot modify the code which is there in my base class. Then we have the data provider class. So again, for the data provider class also we have two classes, that is the implementation and the base class. So my DPC implementation class, it will be automatically generated and it is again to write our own code. Then we have this base class, which is for the automatically generated class, and the code cannot be overwritten, the code cannot be modified for the base class. Then we have the annotation provider class, that is the APC class. So again, for the APC also we have the APC implementation and APC base class, and the difference is again the same, that is the implementation class is for the customized code and my base class is for the automatically generated code. So later on we have the registering the service. So we must specify the following details to enable the service builder to automatically register both the model and the service, and to assign the model to a specific service. So basically that is my technical model name and my technical service name. So my technical model name specifies the name of my data model. So this name must be unique, and the data model is described in the model provider class, which provides the metadata for the service. And after that we have the technical service name. So it specifies the name of the service, and again the name has to be unique for this. So the technical service name that we will specify will determine the name of the service that will be exposed by the SAP gateway. So we can modify the registration information using the activities of the OData channel implementation guide in the backend system. So these are the different classes which got generated at the runtime. Now let's see what is the service maintenance. After that we have the service maintenance and registration. So we use the service maintenance function in the service builder to register and maintain each service in an SAP gateway system. So this function also enables us to maintain the services created and redefined directly in the service builder, as opposed to navigating to another system such as an SAP gateway hub system. So now the service maintenance offers the functions like registering the service in the SAP gateway system, viewing all the SAP gateway systems in which the service is registered, navigating to SAP gateway client from service builder, viewing the error log of the service in the registered SAP gateway systems, viewing the service document, viewing the service activation status of the service in the registered SAP gateway systems. So now let's see how we do the service maintenance and how we do the registration of our service. So now we again go back to our model, and after that if we expand the service maintenance, and if we double click on the service maintenance folder, so we will be able to see the mass maintenance view here. So in my mass maintenance view I will be able to see the systems. These systems are the SAP gateway hub systems which are configured in the SPRO transaction. After that the client is the client of my SAP gateway hub system. Then we have the RFC destination. So the RFC destination, this is an indicator that represents the registration status of the service in the selected system. Then we have the registration status. So my registration status will tell me whether my service is already registered or not. So since right now we can see all gray, so it means the service is not yet registered in this system. And if we right click the system in which we want to register the service and click on register. So let's say if I want to choose this system and I want to click on this register. So I will choose yes. So it is asking me to enter the name of the project. So basically I will do the local project and I'll click on this tick mark. So now we can see that the registration status of the service turned to green. It means the service is registered now. So this way we can check whether my service is registered or it is not. Now I can click on this maintain service registration. So I can call the this one. Now my service is exposed as a metadata, so I can access it as a URL. So it is opening this service. So I have to enter the credentials for it. So now I can see that this service is exposed as an OData service. Now I can see the metadata of it. If I go back, if I change this URL to so if I add the dollar metadata to it, so I can see the metadata for it, and I can see the various entity set, what I have entered to it, what properties I have selected. So all these information, this metadata information, I can add, I can see by adding this dollar metadata to my URL. So this is how we can expose the data model as a OData service. So this is basically the end of this session, and in this session we have discussed how to import the data models using the various data sources, like import from the file, from DDIC structure, from search helps, so from RFC and BOR files. And after that we have seen what are the different runtime artifacts, how what are the different classes which got generated, what is the difference between the implementation class and the base class. Then we have seen how we can register the service and how we can open that service, how we can expose it in the XML format or as a URL in a OData service. So thank you.